Some people buy a bike because it's cheap or cool, or everyone online told them it was underrated. 6 months later, it's back on Craigslist with some excuse in the description. Meanwhile, there are 17 motorcycles you almost never see for sale because nobody wants to get rid of them. They're not exciting, they're not rare, but they work. We're starting with the priciest down to ones that are practically for free. Number 1. BMW R1150 GS. This is the most expensive bike on a list about cheap motorcycles, which should tell you something about what you're getting. $4,500 to $7,000 buys you an 1130cc boxer twin with shaft drive and a reputation for going 100,000 miles without major drama if you actually maintain it. The engine's air and oil cooled, makes about 85 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much until you realize it's tuned for torque and distance, not peak power. And that's why these things last. Shaft drive means you're not dealing with chain maintenance, and the boxer layout means valve adjustments are easier than most bikes because the heads stick out where you can actually reach them. The downside is parts cost way more than Japanese bikes. The thing weighs 540 pounds wet, so it's not nimble, and there are some service items like clutch spline lubrication that you actually have to stay on top of, or you'll regret it. BMW owners will tell you it's worth it because when you're 3 states away from home, the bike just keeps going, and that reliability is what you're paying for. If you're tall, ride long distances, and don't mind wrenching, this is probably the best adventure bike you can get in this price range, even if it costs more than everything else on this list. Next is the Honda Goldwing GL1500, 800 pounds of bulletproof reliability that will outlast your knees, your back, and probably your interest in riding. You're looking at $3,500 to $6,000 for one of these. The 1520cc Flat 6 is one of the smoothest engines ever put in a motorcycle, makes 0 vibration, and has a documented habit of going 200,000 miles when you change the oil and don't do anything stupid. Shaft drive, liquid cooling, enough luggage capacity to move apartments, and the kind of straight-line stability that makes highway riding feel like sitting in a lazy boy going 70. The weight is always there though. Parking lots are not fun. Low-speed maneuvers require commitment, and if you're short, this bike will humble you at every stop sign. Consumables cost more because everything's bigger. Tires aren't cheap, brakes aren't cheap, but the core engine and drivetrain basically refuse to die. People buy these, put 100,000 miles on them, and then sell them to someone else who puts another 100,000 on them, and the bike just keeps going. If you want to eat miles on the interstate, carry a passenger in actual comfort and not worry about whether the bike's gonna strand you, this is it. Just make sure you have garage space, because this thing takes up room, and make sure your arms are ready because moving it around is a workout. Third, Suzuki DR650. They built this bike decades ago and then just kept building the same bike because when something works, you don't fix it. 644cc air-cooled single making torque down low where you actually use it, simple carbureted setup on most years, and a reputation for being boring in the best possible way. These go for $3,500 to $5,500 and you get 50,000 to 100,000 miles without a rebuild commonly. And the whole bike is designed around not braking instead of being exciting. Air cooling means no radiator to worry about. Chain drive means you're doing normal chain maintenance, but everything else is just stupidly simple. Valves are screw and lock nut. No shims, no special tools, just basic wrenches and patience. The downside is highway riding comes with vibration because it's a big single and the suspension is soft and not really set up for aggressive anything. This bike doesn't want to be sporty. It wants to be practical and reliable, and it succeeds at that completely. If you want a bike that starts every time, goes anywhere, and doesn't ask much from you, the DR is it. Just don't expect refinement or comfort at 75 miles per hour, because that's not what this platform was built for. Coming in at number 4, Honda XR650L. This is a dirt bike that Honda made street legal, and it never forgot where it came from. Budget $3,000 to $5,000, and you're looking at a 644cc air-cooled single tall seat height, long suspension travel, and an engine that was built to get beat on trails and just tolerate pavement as an afterthought. 60,000 to 100,000 miles is normal. The engine's understressed and designed for abuse, not performance, and that's why it lasts. Air cooling keeps it simple. Carburetor means no fuel injection headaches, and the whole bike is set up assuming you're going to be standing on the pegs half the time. The problem is, if you're short, you're going to struggle with the seat height. If you want highway comfort, this isn't it. And wind protection is basically non-existent, so long rides get tiring fast. Suspension is firm and meant for dirt, so pavement feels harsh. And the riding position is aggressive compared to street bikes. People who love these bikes really love them, but they're honest about what it is. A dirt bike you can ride on the street, not a street bike that can handle dirt. If you're tall, like dual sport riding and want something simple that won't quit, the XR is a solid choice. If you're commuting on pavement every day, there are better options on this list. Fifth, Suzuki SV650. This bike gets used for everything. Commuting, track days, touring, learning, and it handles all of it without complaining, which is probably why you see them everywhere. 645cc liquid-cooled V-twin, making enough power to be fun without being scary. Lightweight chassis that's easy to handle, and a reputation for going 80,000 to 120,000 miles when you maintain it. They're selling for $2,800 to $4,500, which gets you that 90-degree V-twin that's smooth, torque that comes on predictable, and a whole bike that just feels neutral and balanced, like it's not trying to do anything weird. Shim under bucket valves mean service is more involved than screw and lock nut setups, but the intervals are long, so it's not constant. Liquid cooling adds a radiator to deal with, but also means the engine stays happy in traffic. The bike doesn't excel at anything specific. It's not the fastest, or the most comfortable, or the best handling, but it doesn't really fail at anything either. Suspension is basic. Wind protection is minimal on naked versions, and it's not built for serious off-road, but for a standard street bike, it's hard to beat. If you can only own one motorcycle and you need it to do everything, this might be the answer. Parts are cheap, maintenance is predictable, and the thing just works without drama. Number 6. Kawasaki KLR650. This bike is famous for one specific problem called the doohickey, which sounds made up, but it's a real balancer lever that can wear out, and everyone who buys one of these either upgrades it immediately or lives in fear until they do. Running around $2,800 to $4,200 these days for one, and once that doohickey's fixed, you've got a 70,000 to 100,000 mile dual sport that's built like a tank and refuses to quit. 651 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled single, long stroke design making torque down low, heavy for a dual sport but stable on the highway, and the whole thing is set up for distance and durability, not performance. Suspension is soft, acceleration is modest, handling is stable but slow, and none of that matters because this bike was designed to carry gear across continents and keep running when everything else breaks. Liquid cooling means you've got a radiator. Shim valves mean service is more involved than air-cooled singles, but the intervals are long. The weight makes it less fun off-road than lighter bikes, and the soft suspension doesn't inspire confidence if you're pushing hard. People buy these, fix the doohickey, load them up, and ride them forever. If you want a practical bike that prioritizes working over being exciting, the KLR delivers completely. Just fix that balancer lever, and you're good. 7th on the list, Yamaha FZ6. Take the engine from Yamaha's R6 Supersport, detune it for street use, bolt it into an upright naked bike, and you get this, a bike with sport bike DNA that you can actually live with every day. At $2,500 to $4,000, you're getting a 600cc inline-4, making smooth power. 80,000 to 120,000 miles is common, and the whole package is lighter and more agile than most standards. The inline-4 is refined, vibration is minimal, and the power delivery favors mid to high RPM, which means it's not as punchy down low as a twin, but it pulls clean all the way up. Shim under bucket valves mean service is more complex than simple bikes, but the intervals are long enough that it's not constant maintenance. The upright ergonomics save your wrists compared to sport bikes, and the handling is balanced without being aggressive. Downside is inline-4s are more complex to service. The power delivery might feel boring if you're used to torquey twins, and wind protection is limited, so highway riding gets tiring. This isn't a beginner bike, but it's not a race bike either. It's a street-focused motorcycle with enough performance to be fun without being intimidating. If you want sport bike performance in a package, you can actually ride every day without hating yourself. The FZ6 makes sense. Next up, Harley-Davidson Sportster 883. If you want a Harley without the maintenance headaches, this is the one. 883cc pushrod V-twin with hydraulic lifters so you never adjust valves, belt drive so you never lube chains, air-cooled so there's no radiator to deal with, and carbureted so there's no fuel injection to troubleshoot. The whole thing is built around being simple, and it actually is. Plan on spending $2,500 to $4,000 for one, and you're looking at 80,000 to 120,000 miles. Parts availability that's unlimited in the US, and customization options everywhere because the aftermarket is massive. Low seat height works for shorter riders. Torque comes on strong down low, and the bike feels heavy but planted. The downside is, it's heavy for what it makes. Lean angle is limited because cruiser, suspension, and braking are old school even for the era. And vibration is present, but that's just owning an air-cooled Harley. This isn't a canyon carver or a highway monster, it's a simple, reliable cruiser you can work on yourself, and that's increasingly rare. If you want the Harley experience without the complexity of newer bikes or the cost of bigger twins, the pre-2004 Sportster is it. 9th. Honda Shadow 750. Honda doing what Honda does best, building a cruiser that just refuses to quit. 745cc liquid-cooled V-twin with hydraulic valve lifters on most versions so you're not adjusting valves, shaft drive so you're not kneeling in parking lots lubing chains like a peasant, and 100,000 miles is normal if you change the oil and don't do anything stupid. Cost is usually $2,300 to $3,800 for one, and that gets you a bike that makes Harley owners jealous when they're stuck at the dealer and you're still riding. The V-twin is smooth, torque is down low, where cruisers live, and the suspension is soft and tuned for comfort, not aggressive anything. Low seat height helps shorter riders. Weight is manageable, and the whole bike feels stable and predictable. Downside is lean angle is limited because cruiser geometry, power output is modest. Suspension and brakes are basic even by the standards of when it was built. Liquid cooling adds a radiator to deal with, but the engine stays happy in traffic because of it. This isn't exciting, it's not going to win races, and it's not going to turn heads, but it will start every time and keep running long after more interesting bikes have broken. If you want a comfortable, low-stress cruiser that doesn't ask much from you and just works, the Shadow delivers completely. Number 10. Honda CB 7050 Nighthawk. This is the ultimate bike for people who forgot motorcycles need maintenance because it basically doesn't need any. 747cc air-cooled inline-4 with hydraulic valve lifters and shaft drive, so zero valve adjustments and no chain service. Just change the oil and ride it. Market price sits at $2,200 to $3,500, and you get 100,000 to 150,000 miles. Commonly, the maintenance schedule is literally just change the oil sometimes and check the tires. Air cooling eliminates radiator and coolant service, shaft drive eliminates chains and sprockets, and the inline-4 is smooth with minimal vibration. Handling is neutral and predictable, power delivery is linear, and the whole bike is set up for commuting and general-purpose riding, not performance. The downside is braking, and suspension are outdated even for when it was built. The carbureted fuel system needs attention if you store it long, and the styling and performance are conservative, which is code for boring. The only thing that breaks on these bikes is your will to keep riding something this bland. But if you just want a motorcycle that starts and goes without drama, this is probably the easiest bike to own on this entire list. Not exciting, just reliable. 11th. Yamaha V-Star 650. Budget cruiser that actually lasts, which is rarer than you'd think in this price range. 649cc air-cooled V-twin with shaft drive, simple layout, and 80,000 to 120,000 miles when you maintain it. Around $2,000 to $3,200 is what these cost. And that gets you entry-level price, but not entry-level reliability. This thing costs less than a used Civic and will outlast one. Low compression, modest output, air cooling keeps it simple, and the shaft drive means no chain maintenance ever. Low seat height works for shorter riders, soft suspension is tuned for comfort, and the handling is stable with slow steering response. Power delivery is relaxed, with emphasis on low RPM torque. Acceleration is modest, and top-end performance is limited, but none of that matters if you're just cruising. The downside is limited performance and lean angle. Suspension and braking are basic. Air-cooled engine produces noticeable heat when you're stuck in slow traffic. This bike makes expensive cruisers look stupid when it hits 100,000 miles, and they don't. If you want the cheapest way into cruiser ownership that won't leave you stranded or broke, you can count on the V-Star. At number 12, Yamaha Virago 750. This bike is old, and the electrical system knows it, but the engine doesn't care. 748cc air-cooled V-twin with shaft drive, shorter wheelbase than most cruisers, and 70,000 to 100,000 miles, is common for the mechanical parts. The electrical parts are on borrowed time. You're looking at $1,900 to $3,000 for one, and the mechanical components are basically immortal, but the charging system thinks it's 1985 and acts like it. Engine's bulletproof, the V-twin makes smooth torque down low, shaft drive eliminates chain service, and the lighter weight makes it more maneuverable than bigger cruisers. Low seat height accommodates shorter riders, and the bike feels nimble for a cruiser. The problem is, aging electrical components, including the charging and ignition systems, require monitoring, suspension, and braking, are old school by modern standards, and the aftermarket is limited compared to newer cruisers. This is the bike where you fix the wiring more than the engine, stator, and regulator issues are common, as these things age, but mechanically they just keep running. If you're comfortable with basic electrical troubleshooting and want a compact, reliable cruiser, the Virago works, but you need to accept you're buying something old, and that comes with old bike electrical quirks. 13th, Kawasaki Ninja 500. Entry-level sport bike that refuses to die and veterans still respect because it does everything a beginner needs without the drama of bigger bikes. 498cc liquid-cooled parallel twin, lightweight chassis, and 80,000 to 120,000 miles is common when you maintain it. The parallel twin is balanced. Throttle response is forgiving and linear, handling is neutral and stable, and the whole bike is approachable without being boring. Expect to pay $1,800 to $3,000 for one, and you get a bike with a long production run proving its reliability with strong parts availability in the US. Shim-type valve adjustment with long service intervals. Liquid cooling adds a radiator, but the system is simple and most years are carbureted, keeping things straightforward with no fuel injection complexity. The downside is limited peak power compared to modern sport bikes. Older braking and suspension components and carbs need attention if you store it long, but that's about it. This isn't fast by current standards, but it's light, easy to handle, and the maintenance is predictable. The carbs need cleaning after storage more often than the engine actually has problems, which tells you everything about how reliable these things are. If you want a practical, lightweight, sport-oriented bike that won't quit, the Ninja 500 delivers completely. Number 14. Honda CB500. Honda doing what Honda does, building a commuter bike that's so boring it's dependable. Parallel twin with conservative tuning, liquid cooling on later models, and 100,000 miles plus is normal when you maintain it, which isn't often because this bike doesn't ask for much. $1,800 to $2,800 gets you the bike equivalent of a Toyota Corolla, except more reliable. And that's saying something. Moderate compression ratios, long service intervals, and an engine designed for longevity over performance means this thing just keeps going. Shim-type valve adjustment, but the intervals are long. Chain drive requires normal maintenance, and older versions are carbureted, which keeps things simple. Neutral, predictable handling with upright ergonomics, smooth linear power delivery, and suspension tuned for comfort, not performance. The downside is, performance is modest. Excitement level is absolutely zero. Older suspension and braking, limited features compared to anything modern. This bike will not thrill you, it will not impress anyone, and it will not make you feel alive, but it will start every single time and get you where you're going without complaint. If you want transportation, not entertainment, and you want it cheap, the CB500 is it. 15th, Yamaha XT225. Baby dual sport with a single cylinder so small and understressed, the engine thinks it's on vacation. 223cc air-cooled single, screw and lock nut valves, air cooling, minimal electronics, and 60,000 to 100,000 miles is common because there's basically no stress on anything. These go for $1,700 to $2,800, and you get a bike so light and easy to handle that new riders and short riders can actually manage it without fear. Very low power output means minimal mechanical stress, conservative tuning, modest compression, and the whole bike is designed for simplicity and control over speed. Carbureted fueling, chain drive, minimal bodywork, and the lightest weight on this list makes it approachable and confidence-inspiring. Suspension is soft and tuned for comfort. Power delivery is smooth but limited, and highway speeds are achievable. In the same way, walking to California is achievable, technically possible, but you're gonna suffer. The downside is very limited top-end power, not ideal for sustained highway travel, modest suspension capability, and it's not designed for two-up riding or heavy loads. If you're new to riding, short, want something light that won't intimidate you and just need a bike that works, the XT225 is perfect. Operating costs are extremely low. Coming in at 16, Suzuki GS500. Cheapest standard bike on this list that actually works, and under $3,000 gets you something that'll go 80,000 to 120,000 miles. 487cc air-cooled parallel twin, shim-type valve adjustment with long intervals, and air cooling means no radiator or coolant service ever. Chain drive requires normal maintenance, carbureted fueling, minimal electronics, and the exposed layout makes service access stupidly easy. You're looking at $1,600 to $2,600 for one, and parts cost less than your lunch. The used parts market for these is basically free. Predictable neutral handling with stable chassis behavior, power delivery is linear and forgiving. Suspension tuning favors comfort, and the engine vibration is moderate for an air-cooled twin. The downside is modest power output, older suspension, and braking performance. Carbs require attention after storage, and it's not designed for aggressive riding or long-distance touring comfort. This bike will not excite you, but it will get you to work every day without complaint. And when something does need fixing, the parts are so cheap, you'll wonder if they made a mistake. Rock-bottom ownership costs. Reliable, and it does the job without asking for much. And the cheapest of them all, Honda Rebel 250. We started this list at $7,000, and here we are at $1,200 for a bike that'll go 80,000 to 100,000 miles. This is as cheap as reliable motorcycling gets in the US market. 34cc air-cooled parallel twin that's been basically unchanged for decades because Honda figured out the formula and just kept building it. Screw and lock nut valves, carbureted, air-cooled, chain drive, and so simple that maintenance is oil changes and chain lube. This thing costs less than a decent TV and outlasts 3 console generations. Insurance is cheaper than your Netflix subscription, parts are everywhere, and the bike weighs nothing. So new riders and short riders can actually manage it. Low power output and gentle throttle response make it completely forgiving, low seat height and lightweight. Build confidence and handling is stable and predictable enough that you're not going to scare yourself. The downside is very limited acceleration and top speed. Highway riding is technically possible but miserable. Not built for two-up, and performance is minimal. This is the absolute bottom of the price range, and it's still reliable, still Honda, and still running when everything else quit. If you can't swing $1,200, you can't afford motorcycles. Cheapest bike on this list, and it still works. Look, none of these bikes are going to get you laid or win you followers, but they'll still be running when your buddy's Ducati is at the dealer for the 3rd time this year explaining why the check engine light is Italian for "give us money." Boring wins. Buy one, ride it forever, and stop overthinking motorcycles. But if you are a baller and ready to spend your mortgage money, check out our video with the new 2025 Street Bob, claimed to be the best new Harley in town. See you there.